Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Senior Executives Association is condemning the doxing of federal officials, warning that harassment and intimidation threaten not just individual safety, but the integrity of public service. SEA says protecting those who swear the oath of office is essential to sustaining a motivated, mission-driven workforce. Here to explain the statement and its urgency is President of the Senior Executives Association, Marcus Hill. Marcus, thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. How are you, Terry?
I'm great, but we're going to talk about something pretty serious today. SEA's just issued a statement on doxing of public officials. What prompted you to issue that statement right now?
Well, a couple of incidents that prompted us to issue the statement. During the transition period into the new administration, a couple of our members contacted the association and shared their concerns in terms of being on a watch list, or DHS watch list. And so early on, the Senior Executive Association had members sharing their concerns there. And when we looked into that, we actually saw their images and certain statements that were associated with their profiles. And so we actually reached out in this particular case to an agency, Human Capital Office, to share our concerns and asked if the agency could share some resources with their workforce to ensure that their staffs are aware of this doxing trend and to be able to hopefully help them take measures to limit the negative impacts associated with that doxing. More recently, I'm sure you've seen in the news where the one of the agency heads was a target of doxing, which led to them having to physically relocate, I think, their residents. And so we just thought it was important to share a statement on doxing that it shouldn't be condoned, no matter the party, no matter if you're a political or career a public servant. These public servants are sacrificing their time and abilities to serve the American people, and they should be respected in terms of what they're attempting to do on the behalf of the public.
How widespread would you say this is? Is it really just in one agency? Is it across all federal agencies?
We're seeing that it's very widespread, and I'm sure you've seen recently the emphasis as it relates to doxing of law enforcement officials. I used to work for a law enforcement agency, and so I have an acute understanding of the severity of that sort of action as it relates to those law enforcement agents attempting to perform their jobs, and literally it starts really crossing the line when doxing results in negative impacts on those public servants' families. So I know when I ran for public office locally, my wife was very concerned, not being a political person. It's a pretty tenuous environment these days, and she was very concerned that we may receive some blowback based on my desire to continue to serve as a public servant.
Are career officials being targeted differently than political appointees, or is it really just across the board?
I would say that it's, in my opinion, I think it's across the board. I think it depends on what venue they're in, but obviously it's a political ideology that seems to be the driver of this doxing. And I think about just all of the things that we've seen nationwide as a result of public servants enduring these threats and literally, in some cases, bodily harm or even deaths is associated to doxing and swatting. I think about the Minnesota state legislator and her husband, and all of that information, it appears, was very public and available for folks to react that didn't necessarily agree with that person's ideology or political platform.
I'm speaking with Marcus Hill. He's the president of the Senior Executives Association. Marcus, earlier you mentioned law enforcement officials, and I just want to be clear. When we think about doxing, it's the publication of personal information with intent to harm. But one of the things we're hearing about ICE agents and law enforcement agents now is they want to cover their face so that they can't be identified in photos and that information connected back to personal information. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I know that there are two opinions as it relates to covering their faces based on their engagement in law enforcement activities. I can see both sides as it relates to that issue. But at the end of the day, I believe those agents need to take precautions to be able to effectively carry out their operations. But also, I believe that the government needs to have a degree of transparency as it relates to these operations. So I think that it would behoove both parties and both sides of the issue to kind of come together and try to, as Stephen Covey said, I think in principle number two, seek to understand before being understood. And I think that that's the gap these days, that there's not a lot of listening that goes on between differing people or entities with differing opinions. And so I think that if we could communicate a little more effectively, we would probably get closer to where we would want to be versus where we are now.
Are there particular steps that SEA recommends or that others recommend to help public officials protect themselves from these kinds of threats?
I know that there are lots of lists out there that share some thoughts as it relates to those protections, but being a parent of recently teenage children who are now adults, being a grandparent with three grandsons, I'll just kind of speak from that point of view. And literally, I would first and foremost say that be careful in terms of what you're posting on social media. I wasn't a Facebook person, and not because I didn't like social media, but because I'm aware that these social media platforms, while they're great, it behooves us to understand how to set the privacy and security features on those, because literally a snippet of information, look at me and my family in this location, may prompt someone to visit your home while you're not there. And so I would, one, try to be social media savvy as it relates to setting your security and your security settings there. I think I would caution folks to just be mindful of what their personal identifiable information is, and protecting that. Even if it's not on social media. And if you have an opportunity to engage with companies or entities that have that information, make sure that you let them know that you don't desire for them to share that information. A lot of companies ask you if it's permissible for them to share that information, but I always click no. But there are many lists out there that are available.
If someone has been targeted, what recourse do they have, legally, professionally, through their agency?
I would first and foremost recommend that they document the incident and seek either legal advice, or based on the severity of it, maybe contact their local law enforcement agency to share what has happened, and take those avenues. I wouldn't necessarily ponder and wait to take action. I would, based on the severity, I would definitely do one or two or both of those things simultaneously.
And Marcus, the last sentence in your statement says this has no place in a democratic society. What's the broader impact of this kind of intimidation on public service?
Well, it has a chilling effect on public servants, and we're seeing that almost daily, where we have a very competent, capable people that would be great public servants decide that they're not going to expose themselves or their families to what comes along with that in terms of doxing and swatting and those sorts of things. So what does that mean for the American people? It basically means that we don't have the opportunity to have people that are very qualified and capable to serve our interests. We see some current congressional members deciding not to run again based on their concerns regarding those threats. So it's unfortunate, because being the greatest country in the world, in my opinion, we should be able to have disagreements, professional disagreements. We should be able to listen to one another. We should be able to have a common interest that we rally around to make us even better than we currently are. And because of these types of behaviors, we're setting ourselves back.
I've been speaking with Marcus Hill. He's president of the Senior Executives Association. Marcus, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Terry.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on your schedule and on your device. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.